So, how do you get a mortgage rate in the threes these days? Well, it is possible, but it's tricky. Hi, my name is Shane Willis. Welcome to this week's How's the Market Pensacola. Listen, one of the things that I talked about last week is I said I was going to discuss assumptions. What assumptions are, how you can get them, and are they out there right now? In order to do that, I've got to give you a little bit of history. So I'm going to take you back and we're going to do a little bit of math. I'm not going to do a whole bunch, but we're going to do a little bit of math. When I was in grad school, they taught me a mortgage rule. It's called the rule of 50-25. This is where a lot of these assumptions come from. Rule of 50-25 basically states this: a traditional 30-year mortgage, once you pay 50% of it off, or 15 years, so your time frame is the 50, you've only paid 25% of the principal. Rule of 50-25, okay? So have you ever noticed that as you start to pay a mortgage, it seems like everything goes to interest at the beginning? It's because it is. The way interest is calculated on mortgages is different, all right? It's not just, I'm not going to get into detail math where we had to break down problems and everything else, but understand that's the rule. So let's go back to when rates were 16, 17, 18. People are freaking out because it's 8 right now, but let's talk about when it was 18, 16, 14. I had a mortgage that I'd been paying on for 9 years, right? And the rates are still, my rate's 16. And this person wanting to buy the property has the rates are still at 16. So it's no difference in the rates, right? Well, what would incentivize them to actually want to assume my mortgage? Well, if it's the rule of 50-25, I'm 9 years into a 30-year mortgage. And if the rates are pretty much the same anyways, why wouldn't you assume that? So banks were starting to allow it for a short amount of time. Now, people would assume mortgages, but then rates started to come down. They started to normalize. And some of the bankers went, we're kind of losing some money here, because people are assuming loans 9, 10, 12, 15. Let's say we're already at that 15-year mark to where things are going to start flipping. We're going to start paying more principal. Well, they're losing money that way. They said, I don't want to allow these assumptions anymore. And in your mortgage note, it has to allow the note to be assumed. So pretty much everybody took that out and said, no, we don't want to allow assumability of the mortgage. Instead, you need to go get a new mortgage so that the clock can start over again. We as bankers can make more money in interest, and the cycle continues, okay? So they kind of stopped all that except for one mortgage type. One mortgage type said, veterans, this is a part of a benefit. The VA purchase is a part of a benefit of serving. So they still have them in there to this day. I have a VA loan on my home. Somebody could assume it. It's 3.25%. Does that make things enticing in this market when average interest rates right now are 7, 8, 8.5? Well, sure. Sure it does. A couple of things. Let's talk about those assumptions. I've done some assumptions this year. I haven't done assumptions in, 10 years. One of the reasons that we were doing it before was because the value was down. So someone assumed the loan almost upside down, and the VA had no problem with it because it was the valuation. So that was a different marketplace than we are right now. And don't forget, I'll show you the numbers of our inventory levels after the front section here. But you can assume a VA mortgage right now. Now let me talk to the sellers for just a minute. If you go to have your VA loan assumed, can it be assumed by a non-veteran? The answer is yes, it can. However, if you do allow that, understand that the non-veteran assuming your mortgage, it does take over all the responsibilities. You are no longer responsible for that mortgage. That's the basis of an assumption. Next week, I'm going to talk to you about some other avenues, other options that change up a little bit. But if you assume a mortgage, the person buying it has to be underwritten by the bank, right? And you totally assume the mortgage. So that particular seller is no longer responsible for that mortgage. However, if it is a non-veteran, then your eligibility that is tied up in that particular mortgage does not get returned to you. Can you have more than one VA mortgage at a time? Yes. There are some lenders out there that, some of the local big ones actually, will put a layer on top of the VA guidelines. VA guidelines says you can have 2 VA loans. You can have as many as you want, as long as your eligibility is set there. And I can teach a whole class on eligibility versus loan amount. But as long as you have the eligibility for it, no problem. I had 2 here. There are some lenders out there that say, no, you can't. But what they're doing is they're taking VA's guideline and putting an extra layer of protection on them because they don't want you to have 2 VA loans at the same time. It's their money. They can do that. Cool. I understand that. But to say that you can't from a VA standpoint is wrong. You can have more than 1 VA mortgage. But if I don't have the eligibility for it, and if I let somebody assume my mortgage that is a non-veteran, and my eligibility is not returned to me until that person pays that mortgage off, and they are under no obligation to do so, my eligibility for that particular loan won't be returned. So most of the stuff that I've done is, when it comes to assumptions, have been veteran to veteran, because some veterans don't want to do that. Veterans are not a protected class when it comes to this assumption because there's a financial incentive for a veteran to do this versus a non-veteran to do it. So I have seen that happen a lot. But let me also bring this point up. If you're going to go for an assumption, don't think it's going to happen quickly. Let me say that again. If you're going to go for an assumption, do not think it's going to happen quickly, because it's not. Now, why? Same reasons the banks took it over before. When they took it out, why does a bank want, me paying on this mortgage for the last 8 years, 9 years, just in our example, right? 9 years. And why would the bank at my 3% rate want to allow someone to assume it when they could get that money paid off if I sold the property, get the mortgage paid off, recycle that money to a different mortgage at a much higher interest rate, and the 50-25 rule recycles and starts over again? That's more interest. That's more revenue for the bank. So why would they want to do it? Are they obligated to? Yes, because in the mortgage note, it says this note is assumable. It does not say that we have to do it quickly. I have seen some of these assumptions take 4 months because the bank has to underwrite the person that's assuming it. And it's a lot more. Now, they'll tell you it's because we're doing our due diligence. They won't tell you flat out that we just don't want to do it, right? Okay. I've been doing this long enough that we can read between the lines. And I'm sure if you've been watching this show, you can kind of help me read between the lines some. So if you're going to go for an assumption, as a seller, if you're going to allow assumption, just understand that could take time. That could take quite a bit of time. There are some steps we can do during the listing process to speed that up some, just as an option, even if they don't take the assumption. But if we advertise as the assumption, we might want to take a couple of steps to speed that up because it takes time. The banks really don't want to do that. Why do they want to make 3% on their money when they can make 8%? Why do they want you getting closer to that flip where you're paying more in principal and interest when you can go back and start over and it's all interest for the next 9 years or close to it? You know what I mean? You would do the same. Let's say you had a CD that had $5,000 in it and the bank said, hey, this one bank over here is paying 2%. This bank over here is paying 10%. This one you can renew and you keep your 2%, or you can move it to this and you're paying 10%. You do the same thing. That's what the banks are doing. Excuse me. It's just what the banks are doing. Are assumptions available? Yes. Understand the process takes some time. Is it a good marketing tool, especially in this marketplace? Absolutely. Just as long as you understand the ins and outs. Next week, I'm going to get into some interesting style financing that I'm seeing making a comeback quite a bit in the marketplace. I haven't seen some of this in well over a decade. Some of this I saw in 06, 07, almost leading up to the crash. Now, none of it's illegal, all right, but I want to make sure everybody knows what's happening out there so you can kind of make the best decisions. All right, education class over. Sorry to take you to grad school this morning, afternoon, whenever you're watching this, but I think that needs to be known so you kind of understand some background behind how this happens. Let's take a look at our numbers and see where our inventory is in these 2 counties. Let's go. Signifies a sacred commitment. Whoops, wrong clip. Sorry about that. Let's go. All right, if you've watched the show, you know that I always start with this slide right here. It says if we have between 6 and 7 months worth of inventory in a certain price point, we have what's called a neutral market. Anything greater than 7 months considered a buyer's market, anything less than 6 months considered a seller's market. What the slide doesn't say. Anything greater than 9 months considered a hyper buyer's market, anything less than 3 months considered a hyper seller's market. Let's jump over to Escambia County. And as you can see, nothing under 50,000. All the way up to 350,000 is still considered a hyper seller's market. It's all under that 3-month mark. The 350 to 400, which is considered a sweet spot right now for builders, actually 300 to 400, because as you can see, 250 to 350 has got the most number of actives. But the 350 to 400, 3.1. We don't have as many buyers in that, but then we drop back down, all right, all the way up to $550,000 to a hyper seller's market. Then the 550 and beyond, 550 to 650, we're in a seller's market. 650 to 700, we're in a neutral market. And even though this says yellow, or it says yellow, we're saying colors. Not seeing colors, saying colors. I need more coffee. This shows 7.3, and we see that the color is yellow. It's still considered a buyer's market, because it's over 7 months, just slightly. I think it changes on my charts here. It changes when it technically gets to 8. But yeah, 7.3 months worth of inventory at 700,000 plus. Part of this is your seasonality. Let's jump over to Santa Rosa County. Pretty much everything is a hyper seller's market up to $550,000. Now, if you look, the 500,000 to 550,000 is right on the cusp of coming out of a hyper seller's market and then just a seller's market. Then the 550,000 to 600,000 is a seller's market, not a hyper seller's market. And in Santa Rosa County, your 650 to 700,000 has got your highest month inventory at 5.6 months worth of inventory. So there is kind of the numbers right now. Inventory levels are there. Buyers are a little bit slower right now. I get asked the question every time we start to kick off the holiday season. Is now a good time to list, or should I wait till January? Serious buyers are out right now. People that are coming to look at properties are actually serious buyers right now. We do have some, I know I've put a couple of properties on the market and I've seen some virtual showings show up. I do believe that's just agents trying to familiarize themselves with the marketplace. I don't know that they're actually showing it. I think it's more for their edification, but that's fine. I'm not going to stop somebody from getting better at their craft. Why wouldn't we? But I think that you're going to have, I haven't seen that on the occupied properties. I've only seen that on the unoccupied, your vacant properties. So, because I don't think people are going to ask people to leave if they're just coming for their own edification. So anyways, there's some of your stuff. I always end the show talking about our instant offer program. If you haven't heard about our instant offer program, it's basically where I come out, tell you, hey, look, I can give you an instant offer on this property right now. Within 24 hours, I give you a number, and there is nothing included. All the closing costs are on us. There's no commission. There's no nothing at that point, all right? That's basically what an investment firm would offer you, because I represent a conglomerate of investors. So it's what they would offer you to move quickly. Now, could you get more if we come on the market? Possibly. I don't always say yes, because I have had people that use my number as a floor, right? Like, okay, I can offer you $200,000 on the property. All right, well, let's list it at $225, see what happens. All right. And so they'll try and see if they get more. We listed it at $225. The one I'm thinking of, the highest offer they got was $189. So they took my $200,000. All right, I'm fine with that. We can use it as a floor. I've had other people that have used it as a floor and wound up getting more. All right, so either or is fine. All right, I'm here to try and help you figure out what you want to do. But there's also other factors. How soon do we need to move? How much repairs? These are things that you have to start thinking of, especially in a market, even though we've got lower inventory, because we have lower buyers out there, you have to differentiate. So I've got the link below talking about our instant offer program. If you want any more details, you can check out the site that kind of explains it all. And if not, just reach out to me. You can shoot me a message. I usually put this up on YouTube, so you can shoot me a message through there or whatever, and we can chat. I'll let you know. So hopefully that was a little educational today. All right. Next week, like I said, I'm going to go into some more out-of-the-box financing options. I'm not going to continue to just bring up grad school. But because I owned a mortgage company for a decade, I kind of know a lot of how this works. I know some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, so I'm going to try and share that with you so you guys can get a little bit more educated. Because I keep hearing the market's crazy, the market's falling, we got a lot of negativity out there right now. But if you notice, there's still a lot of equity. A lot of people have equity in properties. The problem that sellers are trying to come up with is they don't want to give up that interest rate. So they don't want to assume because they can't assume. Well, okay. That's an issue that we're trying to deal with. So we've got some buyers still necessary, especially in this town. Sellers are limited, but they're still out there. Deals are still happening every day. So if you need some help, make sure you reach out. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.
I'm a man on a mission.
My mission is to help people break through all the noise out there and
Don't need no permission.
I want to help you get to actual truth. Don't you just want the truth?